What's happening, Mayfest? I almost got clocked. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to a new edition of Tulsa Little Jam. And we got a special treat here. We got Robert Hoefling and Family. It's a big, I'm digging that name, by the way. It's kind of like a little throwback kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's
Vintage.
It's very vintage. And with that, guys, we're super excited to welcome this amazing act to Mayfest and to Tulsa Little Jam. This is the continuation of our first few episodes of Season 2, special Mayfest editions. With that, welcome Robert Hoefling and Family. Give it up.
This episode of Tulsa Little Jam is brought to you by
The process that we do, by the way, for getting bands to be on the show, it was a little rough at first, but then as the band started hearing more and more about us, we started getting a lot of submissions. But my favorite submission had to be Robert Hoefling, because he basically broke into a taping of the show itself and came in and waited for me. And I went to the back of the house, and there was Robert Hoefling and introduced himself to me and gave me a CD and everything. And I loved his look and checked out his music. And that was like one of the best ways to submit his music. So I'm really, really honored to have you on the Season 2 premiere.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having us.
So I'm very curious. You know, we talked about that you had like this sort of a bit of a retro thing going on with the name of the band, and also I kind of heard a little bit of a nice retro rock vibe going on there. Is that something that you were going for originally, or?
I definitely listen to a lot of classic rock type stuff, like 60s music. So, yeah, I guess we're kind of going for that. Yeah. A little bit.
So how did you first start out? Like, give me a little bit of the history of Robert Hoefling.
Well, when I was like 22 or 23, 22, I watched a Bob Dylan documentary, and I was just like, that's what I want to do. And so I was living in Norman at the time. I moved back to Tulsa and started hitting some open mics. And I showed this guy, another local artist, Wink Bertram, a couple of my songs. And he kind of helped me out, get some gigs. And then I met Brian Horton. He helped me put out my first record. And yeah.
So Horton Records has actually been like an incredible supportive tool for all the musicians.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah, how does it feel like being an artist and having people like Brian Horton and that support system and everything in Tulsa? Do you feel like that helps to really drive the music scene?
Oh yeah, I mean I greatly appreciate all of it, and there's a lot of things that I've been able to do that I probably wouldn't have been able to do otherwise, thanks to that help.
Like what?
Oh, just go to Folk Alliance a couple times and really get my first record done. I wouldn't have been able to do that without that help and support. Those are two pretty big things.
This episode of Tulsa Little Jam is brought to you by This episode of Tulsa Little Jam is brought to you by
Yeah, I've talked about this with some of the other bands and stuff that we've had on the show, and that there's this amazing familial atmosphere in the music scene, and everyone kind of looks out for each other and supports each other. And like a lot of your band members, or a couple of your band members, have actually been on our show before in other bands and stuff. And do you feel like Tulsa really supports music in general?
Absolutely. I feel like it's a really, I mean, I don't know what the scene is like in other places, but I feel like Tulsa is a particularly like welcoming scene. Just everybody that, like, there will be, like, when I was getting started, you know, there was some guys that were already pretty established that, you know, I was kind of nervous, like, oh, are they gonna like accept me into the circle or whatever? And like, they really, everybody's pretty welcoming, so it's nice.
Yeah, it's funny because you mentioned Wink Bertram, and Wink's actually been on my list of musicians to approach to have on the show, and yet I got you instead first. So sorry, Wink. Apologize.
You should definitely get Wink on the show.
We got that. I'm being called out. Wink Bertram will be on a future episode of Tulsa Little Jam. Does it make it difficult though, like with all this process of so many of your bandmates being in other bands and everyone supporting each other so much that they're filling in for each other? Does that make it difficult to move forward with new work or anything like that in your music?
It makes it to where you got to change the band members quite a bit. But I don't know that that's a bad thing. I mean, it would be cool to have like a core group. You know, I think you can really develop a sound if you have the same guys every time. But you kind of, if you switch out the guys for different shows and stuff, then you get different sounds with the different players. So you get to make a variety of music.
This episode of Tulsa Little Jam is brought to you by This episode of Tulsa Little Jam is brought to you by...
So what is next for Robert Hoefling?
Well, I'm getting ready to launch a Kickstarter for my second record. That'll be getting launched sometime in the next month. And that Cody, who played guitar with me, he's producing the record. And so we plan to put out that record and then hopefully do some touring and stuff.
You have any sort of like big ambitions as far as that touring goes?
Just a tour, really. I just want to go on tour.
Yeah. Coming to the Howard Johnson nearest you, Robert Hoefling, wherever you can. But that's what
tour of all Starbucks everywhere.
But that's something that the kids and stuff and future artists and musicians need to be aware of too. Is that the amount of work that is involved for an artist of any kind, not just musicians, but musicians have it even hardest, really. But the amount of work and dedication that you have to sacrifice of yourself in order to get your work out there. I mean, it's pretty excruciating.
It is a lot of work, but it's like if you're doing what you love, you know, it doesn't really feel like work. You know, I work on music for multiple hours every day, but it doesn't really feel to me like it does when I'm working my day job. Not that I don't love my day job.
See, what I take from that, and I'm sure there's plenty of artists out there in the audience, too, that agree with that if you really love something, whatever it is, even if it's music or any other form of art, that you pursue it. And hopefully, you know, you have that sort of support system. Did you have that sort of support system when you were starting out, aside from the other musicians, but like friends and family and stuff like that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've had some really good friends that, you know, just you get some feedback sometimes from certain people. Like a lot of people tell you it sounds good and stuff, and I always appreciate that. But every once in a while you have somebody that, like, tells you something about your music really helping them through a hard time or something like that. And that's the reason I like to make music. So that kind of keeps you going and makes you feel like what you're doing is worthwhile.
Do you feel like there's an overall theme for you in your work?
An overall theme. Love, maybe. Yeah. Love and family.
How did I know that Robert Hoefling and the family was going to say that? Love.
And world peace.
World peace.
This episode of Tulsa Little Jam is brought to you by...
You got the blues. Is it all that bad news? Oh, that train that's rolling by stopped you on your way, messed up your whole day. Seemed no matter how you try. Well, money away for just a minute. You know it's pride before the fall. Remember your humble beginnings. Nobody said it's easy at all. Well, don't you know, you know who loves you, baby. We go all the way like it was going out of style. Turn around, we dancing, morning rain. Stop naked in the bright light. We'll let that light shine on. Was it all them cheap thrills? Guess that's how the deal goes down. Well, you think you rock and roll too soon before you know you're just some old fogey that's still in town. Nobody seems to want to listen. You know it's darkest before dawn. We don't know how much time we're getting, so put your favorite record on. Say, don't you know, you know who loves you, baby. We go all the way like it was going out of style. Turn around, we dance in morning rain. Stop naked in the bright light. We'll let that light shine. Don't you know who loves you, baby. We go all the way like it was going out of style. Turn around, we dance in morning rain. Stop naked in the bright light. We'll let that light shine on. Oh, you know who loves you, baby. Well, don't you know, you know who loves you naked. Well, don't you know, you know who loves you naked, naked, baby. Thank you guys very much.
This episode of Tulsa Little Jam is brought to you by...
Normally, guys, we would do a little bit of audience questions, but it'd be a little unruly at that point, and the show would probably never end. So, with that, guys, let's give another round of applause for Robert Hoefling of Robert Hoefling Family. Thank you so much for being on Tulsa Little Jam.
Yes, thank you so much for having us. Oh, thanks, man. Thank you.